To my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you.
Tonight, our new king has addressed the nation, paying tribute to his late mother. After leaving Balmoral earlier today, he received a warm welcome from his public for the first time outside Buckingham Palace.
Tributes to the Queen have been paid across the country. Young and old have been gathering to pay their respects. This is the STV News.
Good evening. Our new king has spoken. A short time ago, King Charles III made his first address to the nation. He spoke of his profound sorrow and the debt he owed his mother, and he promised a life of service just as she did. He spoke from Buckingham Palace, from where the Queen gave countless addresses. This is what he had to say.
On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. They mean more to me than I can ever possibly express. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
Earlier today, King Charles III left Balmoral here behind me to make his journey south. Tonight, a special service has been held at St Paul's Cathedral in London. At Buckingham Palace, Holyrood and around the country, people have been flocking to pay tribute. We're live tonight with reflection and reaction. First, a look back on the day's events from our political correspondent, Ewan Petrie.
For the new king, there was little time for private mourning. He left Balmoral to fly back to London, less than 24 hours after the death of his mother. At Buckingham Palace, he spoke to the crowds gathered outside and spent time reading messages of support.
Your Majesty.
One of his first duties was a meeting with the Prime Minister ahead of his address to the country.
As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavour to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life.
At Edinburgh Castle, a traditional salute. 96 rounds fired, one for every year of the Queen's life. Crowds continued to lay flowers at the gates of Balmoral throughout the day.
I really liked the little Jubilee thing she done with Paddington, so I wanted to leave my Paddington here, and then we left some flowers for her too.
It's kind of really hit us quite hard yesterday. I lost my mother at a young age and just feel like it's kind of going through those emotions again.
She's been such an incredible example to us, I mean, for all of our lives. She's been the Queen for as long as we've been alive.
At midday, church bells tolled in celebration of the Queen's life.
And I last saw her, which was Sunday, and had lunch with her before I left to come back to Dunfermline. She was really lively. We had a very lively, engaging conversation. She was really quite funny as well, and there was nothing in that parting that would suggest to me that this was going to happen.
Books of condolence have also opened. At Holyrood, the presiding officer left her own tribute. And at Westminster, MPs stood to observe a minute's silence before the Prime Minister led tributes in the Commons.
Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, was one of the greatest leaders the world has ever known. Yeah. She was the rock on which modern Britain was built. She came to the throne at just 25, in a country that was emerging from the shadow of war. She bequeaths a modern, dynamic nation that has grown and flourished under her reign.
Queen Elizabeth created a special personal relationship with us all. That relationship was built on the attributes that defined her reign: her total commitment to service and duty, her deep devotion to the country, the Commonwealth, and the people she loved. In return for that, we loved her.
Crowds also gathered at Holyrood Palace, the Queen's official residence here, while the First Minister paid her own tribute at Bute House.
Scotland loved, respected and admired her. And by all accounts, Her Majesty was really happier than when she was here in Scotland at her beloved Balmoral, a fact I have been privileged to observe personally. I hope it will be a source of comfort to her family that she spent her final days in a place that she loved so much.
A period of national mourning is underway. It will last until the end of the day of the Queen's state funeral. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Well, Stephen Brown has spent much of the week here at Balmoral. Stephen, we've seen people arriving in their masses here today, and really since the news broke last night.
Yeah, we have seen literally busloads of people. They've been walking along here, heading towards the gates, laying their floral tributes, and they are local, but they're also from around the world as well, with their own special messages talking about the service that the Queen has given to the country as well. But you have to remember, this is also a personal moment. We've seen the King return to London, we have seen the royal family here. They're remembering their mother and grandmother. But also around here in this community, a lot of people are employed here, and the Queen lies in rest tonight in the ballroom. They are paying their respects to her as well, to an employer and also to a friend as well. Now, across the whole of the country, we have seen flags at half-mast, we have seen book of condolences opened up as well, and we are seeing events cancelled, such as football matches and even the strikes being called off as well. And across Scotland, people have been paying their own tributes to the Queen.
I can't really say, it's just too sad. We've lost a wonderful role model in all our lives.
She was quite a lady. She was well loved in America.
Not many people make a promise and live it through to their death, and she was really working right up to the last moment of her life.
My mother was actually here in England for the coronation, about the contemporary age of the Queen herself. My mother passed about 10 years ago, so it just kind of means a lot to us.
People of my age, I'm 68 now, it's literally been our whole lives.
I've only lived here for a couple of days now, and I already feel like so much sympathy.
She's left a huge mark on our countries as someone with grace, dignity, and such great leadership.
And Stephen, there's no doubt that this was such a special place for the Queen.
Oh, absolutely. The Queen loved to come here. She spent every summer here, and it was that privacy that she was afforded that she loved so much, and she was at peace here, and that was what the statement obviously said when she did pass. She died peacefully here, and that will bring comfort to her family. Many people you speak today hope that the royal family will still continue to come here in the weeks and the months ahead to try and come to terms with their loss.
And what does happen next?
So what will happen at the moment, obviously the Queen Queen lies here in the next couple of days. We believe Sunday her coffin will be driven to Edinburgh. She will lie and rest there. We will have the Accession Council meeting. They will proclaim the new King as well. And we have a number of events, given this has been planned for some time of late. There are a number of events that will happen over the next 10 or 11 days or so, and then of course this will have a culmination in the state funeral for the Queen, for the 96-year-old who obviously passed away.
Stephen, many thanks for that. Well, tonight the Prime Minister attended a special remembrance service in London. Liz Truss arrived at St Paul's Cathedral just hours after meeting King Charles for the first time at Buckingham Palace. We can cross now live to our Westminster correspondent, Catherine Sampson, who's in London. Catherine, a new chapter is upon us.
Yes, I mean, in any historical context, this has been an extraordinary week when you take a step back from it. A new Prime Minister and then a new monarch within days of each other. Today in the Chamber, we really heard a very heartfelt tributes from MPs. If you think about the Parliament, Queen Elizabeth II, well, she took to the throne before anyone in there had taken their seat. She took to the throne before most politicians were even born. This is not a situation this Parliament has worked through before, and effectively here politics as normal is on pause. The business of the day in the Chamber pushed aside for this special session of condolences. It started at midday. It will run through the night until 10 p.m. this evening, and as you heard earlier, it was led by the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Before that, audience she had with the new King Charles, her first audience with a monarch as a new Prime Minister, his first audience with a Prime Minister as a new monarch. An extraordinary, start there to their relationship. And King Charles, chose to get out before he went into Buckingham Palace. He was greeting the crowds. There were many well-wishers there. I think, also a real sense of sympathy amongst the cheers there, because as well as being a king who of course is having to go through these formalities, he's also a son who is mourning his mother. Tomorrow MPs will return here to Westminster to sit on Saturday for more tributes to the Queen, but as doing so they're also going to be swearing a new oath of allegiance to the new King, King Charles III.
Catherine, thank you. Well, from Westminster to Holyrood, where John Mackay is in Edinburgh. He spent the day there, and John, tributes have continued to flood in there too.
They have indeed, Andrea. Normally when we're here at Holyrood, the place is buzzing with whatever the latest political drama is. Not tonight. Tonight it's a strangely subdued and sombre place, although that will change in the next few days. We're joined by our political editor, Colin Mackay. And Colin, we've heard how important Balmoral was to the Queen, but Holyrood was too. And she also had a special relationship with the Scottish Parliament.
Absolutely. You're here in Holyrood, where you have the Parliament, you have the Palace, and around us we have the people who've been paying tribute to the late Queen today. There's not so many of them now, but they have been gathering just over there laying floral tributes, because the Queen was someone who managed to unite all three of these quite regularly. Every opening ceremony of the Scottish Parliament since 1999 is what she's attended. She always took the time to talk to the guests of the MSPs at those ceremonies, the guests who represented the local communities around Scotland. And I remember back in 2019, just a few years ago, when it was the 20th anniversary celebration of the Scottish Parliament, they invited all the young people who were born on the 1st of July 1999, just like the Scottish Parliament. Hundreds of them in the Scottish Parliament. The Queen spoke to loads of them. And I remember speaking to those young people afterwards, and they were thrilled by that experience. They were absolutely buzzing and glowing afterwards.
What was the difference between her relationship with Holyrood and Westminster?
There was quite a significant difference, and she recognised that as well, because when she delivered the Queen's speech at Westminster, she was reading out the words of the government, mostly a list of the legislation that they were proposing. But when she came to the Scottish Parliament, she was always invited to the Scottish Parliament, she spoke her own words. And At the opening ceremony just last October, the Queen was there, and she said that she felt deep and abiding affection for this wonderful country. She spoke often of the many happy memories she and Prince Philip shared of their time in Scotland, but she also crucially insisted that Prince Charles and Camilla, then the Duke and Duchess of Rothesay, would continue to follow the Scottish Parliament's progress. It felt at that time as if she was passing on a torch.
Colin, thank you for that. Well, the focus of the coming days is a carefully choreographed ceremonial plan with Edinburgh very much at the heart of it. Events will pay tribute both to the Queen and the accession of the new King. Our senior reporter Gordon Cree can take us through some of what we can expect.
John, this is the Royal Mile. Of course, it links where you are to Edinburgh Castle. It's been quite busy, but just a couple of weeks ago, of course, this was packed with crowds, street performers, people handing out leaflets, as it was at the heart of the festival fringe. But very different now. They're preparing to cordon off this area around St Giles Cathedral, getting it ready for what's to come in the next few days, something that's been in the planning for years. Now, it begins tomorrow, when at that accession ceremony in London, Charles will make an oath to preserve the Church of Scotland. Then on Sunday, a proclamation here at the Market Cross will see him declared as the new king. Later that day, the late Queen's body arrives from Balmoral. The coffin will spend the night in the throne room at Holyrood Palace. Then on Monday, that's the big day. There'll be a procession where she's brought up to St Giles. There'll be a service and what's called the Vigil of Princes, where members of the royal family will effectively stand guard around her coffin, which is sure to be quite poignant. Then she will lie in state for a short period where the public will be able to file past her coffin. Organisers are expecting queues for that to begin as soon as tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, the late Queen will be taken to Edinburgh Airport, where she will be flown to London to lie in state at Westminster Hall for several days until her funeral. So, very big few days to come here before the attention switches elsewhere. They're ready for big crowds, potentially tens of thousands of people here. John.
Gordon, thank you. Well, the flag flies at half-mast here at the Royal Palace in Scotland, waiting for the return of the late Queen. We go back to where she is now at Balmoral, and Andrea.
Thank you, John. Well, the Queen's death will be felt acutely here on Royal Deeside, where the monarch spent much of her time. She was a regular at Crathie just down the road from here and was often seen out and about. Scotland held such a strong place in her heart. Here's Louise Hosey.
Lying just 8 miles from the Balmoral estate, many people here in Ballater hold the same affinity and affection for their late Queen as she held for them.
Just so sad. And been a wonderful monarch and been with us all our lives.
I'm very proud that she chose here to have her last days.
How will you remember her?
Always, as she was.
Today in the village, a sense of reflection and contemplation. The local church has opened its doors and set up a book of condolence for people to provide their own personal tributes. Its minister has his own memories of the monarch.
When you were talking to her, you seemed to be put in a place where at ease and you were the focus. A really sad day and a loss, not just for this village, but for the whole community, the whole country.
Hidden from view in the stunning Aberdeenshire countryside, Balmoral is the place where the Queen is said to have really been herself. Its surroundings and seclusion offered Her Majesty respite from her royal duties and the privacy to drive and walk the estate with little fuss. A highlight of the summer holiday was always the Braemar gathering. For decades, the Queen and her family made the event an important part of their stay. The annual gathering attracts thousands every year to watch the Highland Games, and perhaps so much more so, a chance for the public to see the royal family in relaxed surroundings. It was here that Prince Andrew was first shown to the world, with his older siblings and parents in the shadow of the castle.
Because it's not easy, is it?
From Balmoral, the Queen would attend local events and openings, sometimes alone and at other times with the extended family. Her Majesty could also entertain large crowds in its grounds. Prime Ministers were among her guests, invited to spend time with the Queen during her stay on the estate. The Queen and her family regularly attended nearby Crathie Kirk, making the short journey from their Deeside home. They became part of the congregation, and many of those who worked on the estate would gather with them in the church on a Sunday. There is great pride here that the Queen felt truly at home on Royal Deeside.
From a wee boy coming up to see the Queen go through the village and the line the streets with your little Union Jack. Yesterday was a shock to us all here. It's really sad days.
The royal connection is built into the fabric of this community. Today, people here are mourning the loss of a queen, an employer, but perhaps above all, a much-loved neighbour.
Well, the Queen had great affection for Scotland, it's clear to see that, and she was a constant presence in what was a rapidly changing world for Scots. In moments of national importance, of crisis and of celebration, she was always there to witness and to shape history. Sian Frew looks back now on a life of service.
To me, Scotland and happiness have always been closely interwoven.
The special connection the then Princess Elizabeth described to a packed Usher Hall in 1947 was forged from a very young age.
Her love of Scotland probably began with her childhood visits every year to her grandparents here, which they really loved, apparently.
The future Queen would jump the hedges in the grounds of Glamis Castle. She continued to visit her mother's ancestral home in Angus throughout her reign.
We didn't believe her because the hedges were so tall. And then she sent this photograph and said, "To prove to you and your gardener that I did jump over the hedges." She was just a delight to have. And every time she'd been here, everybody was in a glow for days, you know.
The young girl with a love of dogs and horses became Queen at the age of 25. Her coronation is remembered fondly by those who took part in the historic ceremony.
I was a paid boy at the coronation. Sir Winston Churchill was there, and my father, and there were tears rolling down the cheeks of Sir Winston, saying, "Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful." She had this enormous sense of duty.
This was the welcome for the new monarch on her first trip to Scotland after her coronation.
The people of Glasgow sum up the affection all Scotland holds for its young and gracious Queen.
Over 4 decades later, crowds again turned out when Queen Elizabeth officially opened the first Scottish Parliament since 1707.
It is a moment rare in the life of any nation when we step across the threshold of a new constitutional age.
It's not easy after 300 years of not having it to go back to traditions. Probably most important of all, we had the form of language used to greet her, which is still used.
With warmth and affection as Queen of Scots.
Ban Ki-moon got it right when she addressed the General Assembly in 2010. He said she was an anchor for our times, and she was. She was always there.
She did face moments of crisis. She was criticised at home, for instance, with the shenanigans of members of her family. That often reflected badly on her, I think unfairly, but it did.
Some of that criticism came following the death of Princess Diana, when the Queen remained at Balmoral with her grandsons William and Harry, delaying their return to London.
She was there for them, and being away from all that in London, I think, was important. And I think she took the criticism, but I still think it was unfair. And I know she was in Balmoral, where the boys felt a kind of peacefulness.
The death of Princess Diana and the public's response to it shook the royal family. From this point, it was understood the monarchy had to modernise.
Do you take milk and sugar, Mum?
Could I just have a little milk?
A little milk, no problem.
In the summer of 1999, in one Glasgow household, the Queen came for tea, a radical shift from the formal royal visits of old.
But he's now moved schools, has he? Is he now? Tea?
By 2022, it was tea with a famous bear that stole the headlines.
She understood the power of the media, the soft power that image gave her. She used the media at moments of crisis, at moments of celebration, to reflect the nation back to itself.
Good evening, Mr. Bond.
In 2014, the Commonwealth Games spotlight fell on Glasgow. There, one of the most photographed women in the world went viral when a new sport emerged at the Games, snapping selfies with the Queen.
No, I've never played hockey. Philip did.
2014 was also the year of the Scottish referendum. Ahead of the vote, the Queen had said Scots should think carefully about the future. The SNP had planned to keep the monarch had Scotland voted to leave the United Kingdom.
No one would ever argue that Scottish politics is the business of the meek, the passive, or the faint-hearted.
On the day she became the longest reigning monarch in British history, the Queen was in Scotland, opening the new Borders Railway.
No monarch has lived longer. No monarch has had such a force of personality that is esteemed and respected across the whole world. She was a compassionate, dedicated, wonderful public servant.
The Queen shared this private photograph taken in Scotland following her husband's death. The image of the monarch then sitting alone at the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral gave the world a glimpse of the end of an era.
It just felt so sad, and it emphasised the loss. There was that emptiness for what's to come. Her commitment was total. We talk about giving 100%, but she gave so much more than 100%. And everything she did for the crown.
The world now reflects on a remarkable reign. Scotland has lost the only monarch most of us have ever known.
Well, here on Royal Deeside, people are still coming in their droves to pay their respects, and I'm sure that will happen for some time to come. It's clear there has been a huge outpouring of loss for the Queen, not just here in Scotland, but across the UK and indeed around the world. There's a sense that she wasn't just our monarch, she was a global monarch, given the depth of admiration, respect and love for her. She lived an extraordinary life and leaves an extraordinary legacy.
It is the end of an era, the change from the Elizabethan era to that new era of King Charles, and Edinburgh will be at the heart of that transformation. The late Queen will come from Balmoral to here at Holyrood Palace and then be taken to St Giles, where she will lie in state. The King will come north for these events. These truly are historic days. From all of us across Scotland, good night.
Hello there. Well, we've had a very quiet start to the hurricane season, but very different out there now. We've got a storm forming to the east of the Dominican Republic. We've got Hurricane Errol sweeping its way across Bermuda just now, and we've got the leftovers of Hurricane Danielle sitting in the Atlantic to the west of us. The remnants of that storm will be heading towards Portugal, but it will inject a little bit of heat and more moisture our way for Sunday. So we'll see some heavy rain coming in Sunday night and especially into the first part of Monday. Of course, it's at this time of year sometimes those remnants can get dragged our way, but for the time being, the bulk of them staying in the Atlantic. Now, talking of heavy rain, well, of course, last night, particularly around Tayside, we had heavy rain and flooding. We've still got the remnants of that weather front. It's been weakening throughout the whole day across eastern parts, but still lingering across eastern parts of Fife, East Lothian, the capital and the borders, where it will stay quite damp through the night. Elsewhere, largely dry, clear spells, and temperatures in the Highlands possibly down to lows of 5 or 6 degrees in some spots, so quite a bit cooler than previous nights. Now, tomorrow we've got a ridge of high pressure, so it is actually going to be a fine day for most of us, a lot of dry and sunny weather, but that weather front still taking its time to clear away, so expect again across Edinburgh, East Lothian, Mid Lothian and also the borders, a lot of cloud to start the day, but it will start to thin and break through the morning into the afternoon to give us some sunny spells. Sunny spells elsewhere, and especially sunny I expect tomorrow across the Highlands, the Hebrides and also the Angus and Aberdeenshire coast. Lovely blue skies, temperatures up to about 18 or 19 degrees in the Highlands, so feeling very pleasant once again, 13 or 14 across Shetland. Then on Sunday, a dry, bright start to the day for many of us, but we'll see some heavy rain and stronger winds coming in from the west later on. Bye-bye.